Several A-list stars are the target of what appears to be one of the biggest celebrity hacking leaks.
It made headlines around the world back in September 2014.
Of 100-plus celebrities exposed.
The news that a hacker had gained access to the online accounts of movie stars, models, and musicians.
In the hack known as Celebgate.
Stealing nude photos and videos and putting them on the internet for all to see.
How did this hacker get into the system?
You know, I feel like it may not be one person, it may be a group of people. And
that turned out to be true. In the weeks and months that followed, the FBI tracked down and arrested 4 men. Each one ended up admitting guilt or taking a plea deal. 2 months ago, the last of the 4, a Connecticut man named George Garofano, was sentenced to 8 months in prison. The case of Celebgate was closed, or so it seemed. In Garofano's federal case file, at the bottom of page 7, the sentencing memorandum, CBS 6 found a mention of another previously unknown defendant. Christopher Brannon was initially charged in California, but his case was transferred here. Why? Because he lives in Henrico County. Brannon is a licensed realtor, but until recently, that wasn't his only job. He was also a special education teacher at Lee Davis High School in Mechanicsville. So how did the 30-year-old educator become the villain in one of Hollywood's biggest scandals?
There's really no privacy when you're on your computer, and if you think there is, you're probably a fool.
Federal court documents obtained by CBS 6 state that between August of 2013 and October of 2014, Brannon intentionally hacked the internet accounts of more than 200 people. And not just the celebrities we know about. Prosecutors say he also targeted his own sister-in-law, who was a minor at the time, in addition to numerous current and former students and teachers at the school where he worked. Prosecutors say Brannon did it by researching the public social media accounts of his victims. Based on what they had posted, he was able to figure out answers to their security questions. Investigators say he also went phishing, using bogus email addresses that appeared to be from Apple Security to convince his victims to divulge their usernames and passwords. He would also use forensic software to download full iCloud accounts. That's where the feds say he found the naked photos and videos of the rich and famous.
The bad guys are really persistent, and they only have to get lucky. We have to be 100% perfect.
VCU professor Peter Aiken is a data and computer security expert.
Technology is always neutral, but if you use it badly, it can be very, very powerful.
But he says you wouldn't have to be a tech whiz to do the type of hacking described in this case.
If all I need is that information to find you, and then I can look around and do this, it's called social engineering, and it does not take a lot of time.
That is no different to me than somebody breaking and entering into my house, going through my property.
Taylor Warren enjoys taking his laptop with him when he grabs coffee at the urban farmhouse in Scott's Addition. But he thinks about security all the time and says that Celebgate has resonated with him.
It just emphasized the importance of not doing anything on an online device that you wouldn't want brought up a couple years down the road.
A number of questions remain unanswered in this case, like why wasn't Christopher Brannon ever named along with the original 4 suspects? And what was the connection between these men who live in different parts of the country? According to the plea agreement, Brannon has assisted the government in their investigation. CBS 6 legal analyst Todd Stone says that might provide a big clue.
The first court entry that you see is one where they agree to send it here to Virginia and plead guilty to an information. It suggests that there was a long history of something prior to that, and a lot of times that means cooperation.
Experts say hacking and phishing is only going to get worse in the years to come.
100%.
To better protect himself, Warren says he now uses more complicated passwords.
16 or 20 different letters, numbers, and signs.
But like anyone with a smartphone, tablet, or laptop, he knows he's still vulnerable, both at home and away.
The fact that I'm on my computer here in a public location means I'm assuming the risk that somebody could somehow gain access to my computer.
Hanover schools confirmed that Christopher Brannon was an employee of Lee Davis High School from August 2013 to June 2015. However, they say he was placed on administrative leave in January 2015 after the FBI alerted the school district to their investigation. Mr. Brannon is scheduled to appear here in federal court next week. Per the terms of his plea agreement, prosecutors are urging the judge to sentence him to nearly 3 years in prison. We made contact with Mr. Brannon in person, and he declined to comment for this story. Outside of the federal courthouse in Richmond, I'm Jake Burns for CBS 6 News.
All my friends change their number every couple of years. I've kept the same one.
Having the same cell number for 21 years is a source of pride for Chris Fullman.
They'll call the same day multiple times.
But also frustration. His cell phone rings all day, every day, with calls from numbers he does not recognize.
Up to about 10 calls a day. Sometimes it was 8 calls a minute from one specific number. Anything from straight up scams to just trying to get your business.
The flood of spam and robocalls, all the more maddening for Fullman because of the steps he's taken to stop them.
You think of the do not call list, and I'm on it. I've been on it since 2003, I think, and they just keep calling.
Many feel the number of unwanted calls have increased in recent years, and data backs that up. According to the Federal Trade Commission, the number of complaints about spam calls in Virginia has doubled in the last 5 years. Last year, more than 16,000 people with an 804 area code complained to the feds about spam calls, the third highest total in the state.
I'm the Attorney General, even I get them, and I know how annoying it is.
Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring says he too is constantly bombarded with spam calls.
I get the same call from, I think it's New Brunswick, New Jersey, every single day.
Herring's consumer protection team has a couple of theories for the recent spike in spam calls. More sophisticated technology allows companies and scammers across the globe to mine consumer information online, including cell numbers. Herring says data breaches or submitting your number through an online form could make your number accessible to scammers and telemarketers.
You know, you go fishing where the fish are, which means those who are going to commit financial fraud, they're going to go after people with cell phones because that's what most people are using.
Spam callers also have ways to appear more legitimate. A technique called spoofing or neighboring allows the caller to mimic the first few digits of your number to make it more likely you'll pick up.
Some of these callers now have more information about you. So they have information that they've gotten from social media that make it sound like they know who you are.
There are certain things you should do if you get an unwanted call. Don't pick up or hang up immediately. Do not press any numbers. Immediately contact your service provider. And then report the number that called you to the Federal Trade Commission or Herring's office.
They always seem to end on a good note, so they'll tell you to be blessed.
Thanks for your time and be healthy and blessed.
I think they want anything but.
Chris Fullman is a web developer.
I use something called Call Protect.
So he's downloaded several programs that either block or screen potential scam calls. And then there's his old-fashioned technique.
Well, generally I don't ever pick up my phone now if it rings.
While Fullman says he doesn't let the annoyance get in the way of his business or social life, he also doesn't foresee a clean missed call list anytime soon.
With any type of legitimate tool for communication or marketing, there's always going to be people that try to take advantage of it for not the greatest cases. You know, report these numbers. The more reports they get, they'll see that it's a growing problem and that they might need to act.
Fairfield Court in Richmond's East End. Katina Brake is called at home for the better part of 39 years.
These are just some families and godkids, friends.
After years of hard work and savings, Brake is set to take her family on a new venture, home ownership.
I keep calm, and then I'll say, oh my God, it's happening!
When Brake began checking out options for her family, there was really only one place on the list.
I started seeing, of course, you know, the homes being revitalized and being built, and just like, you know what? I want to live in Churchill.
But sticker shock soon became her reality.
I grew up in Churchill, and I want to purchase a home in Churchill now that I'm able to purchase a home. and I absolutely cannot afford it.
Experts say in recent years, the housing market in the city of Richmond has exploded. With more people wanting to buy than the number of homes on the market, prices have shot up. We took a look near Fairfield Court. This home listed at $227,000. Each of these townhomes going for $275,000. And this home was flipped and sold for $450,000. The most obvious sign of the home price boom may be the city's property tax assessment. This year marked the largest citywide increase in a decade.
We are seeing more people who are wondering why they're paying a lot more in real estate taxes compared to our neighbors in the counties.
Real estate agent Mike Ryan has worked in the market for years.
It can be a little bit of a sticker shock.
He says a higher real estate tax bill affects who can buy in the city and impacts some families who already own homes.
It may only be 30, 40, 50 bucks for the average person, but if you're on a fixed income, it's a lot of money. Also, younger people that have student loans, it adds to the pot.
So who ultimately determines how much a home is worth and how do they do it?
The assessor follows the market. We don't get ahead of it.
Richmond City Assessor Richie McKeithen and a team of 30 people reappraise homes every year. He tells us the driving factors are sales activity in each neighborhood, the condition of a house, and any upgrades made by the homeowner. But CBS 6 received reports that some homeowners have been told by city assessors pictures found on Zillow and other services were used as the basis for an increased assessment without actually inspecting the property. We took those concerns straight to McKeithen.
Do you always have someone go out and inspect the property in person?
When it demands that we do. Oftentimes you'll have enough sales stock that you've seen all of the typical sales in an area, and so you don't necessarily have to go see everything.
McKeithen says all signs point to property values continuing to rise in the coming years.
I didn't know. Now I know.
When Brake first began looking, tax assessments were not on her radar until a friend told her to think about how it's going to impact her monthly payments.
So I'm just grateful that I'm actually able to share home ownership, with my children, just showing them a different way to invest, a different way to live.
She ended up purchasing this townhome in Eastern Henrico.
This is my sister and her kids.
While Brake plans on staying active in Church Hill, she wonders what the neighborhood she grew up in will lose if more people like her move out.
I'm not saying they don't know the significance of Church Hill, but is it really dear to their heart, like a resident who's been here for 39 years?
Property values and assessments across Central Virginia are on the rise. In Chesterfield, Henrico, and other surrounding counties, assessments increased over last year, but not as much as Richmond. City homeowners have until July 31st to appeal their assessment with the assessor's office and until November to appeal with an outside board. We have details on how to do that on WTVR.com. Working for you, I'm Jake Burns. It can be a touchy subject these days. What's your temperature on politics right now?
I'm hot. I'm about 100 degrees.
I don't know, guys. I'm just feeling hot about it,
Pretty low. I don't spend too much time thinking about it. Pretty busy with work, so.
I'm definitely ready to vote. Well, right now, kind of busy. I'm on my lunch break. So I haven't thought about it at all.
That's the application, but it has to be put in the mail.
We're 42 days away from congressional midterm elections.
I have another question about the voter ID cards.
Virginia's decision could help dictate the balance of power in the U.S. Congress.
We're already seeing an increase in registrations.
The Virginia Department of Elections says the data shows voter interest is high in 2018.
So even absentee voting is up near presidential levels in the past. So we're looking at increased interest in this election for sure.
Some voters we met know what direction they plan to go with their vote.
Politics, it's been pretty crazy recently. It takes a lot of energy to even figure out what's going on. It's pretty easy to just go along with what you know.
And others seek change.
Democrats, Republicans, just everyone. I just want us all to come together, and it's just time for a big change. Because it's a big day, and I have to put input in if I want anything done.
Deadline to register to vote for this election is October the 15th. You can check your registration status online, and on WTVR.com, we have a list of ways you can register to vote if you need to do that. Working for you in Richmond, Jake Burns, CBS 6 News.
A lot of wine. Well, the new superhero movie Black Panther shattered records on opening weekend, and it's still making headlines around the world. And we've learned a local man from our area is in the film. Today, our Jake Burns talked to his sister at their family business in Chesterfield.
We've been around a little while.
For 20 plus years, Bamba's hair braiding has sat just off Turner Road.
All day micros.
Masanje Bamba helps run the shop now, and some of her earliest memories are in this room.
The shop was always home base. After school, we came here. When we were celebrating, we all came here.
Pictures of her brother Bamba John hang on the walls.
That was in a braid shop when he was rocking his cornrows.
But now, Masanje sees her brother in a different kind of picture.
You've seen it.
Bamba John plays a militant leader in the record-breaking blockbuster Black Panther. The part is brief, but Masanje did not miss it.
So I did let out a "Go Bamba" in the theater. I did. But honestly, my family and I were just so overwhelmed, and we can't contain the joy because his dreams have actually come into fruition.
He's now in the biggest blockbuster of the year, but Masanje says her brother got his acting bug in theater class right here at Manchester Middle School. Bamba John played starring roles on stage at Meadowbrook High.
Little Shop of Horrors was a really big one in high school. That was it. He fell in love with it. That's where his dream was really created.
A dream with Chesterfield roots that continues in Hollywood.
My mom taught me well.
Much like her brother, Masanje is proud of the craft she's chosen.
Perfect mix of African art and the craft of braiding and American culture.
Some have said the same about Black Panther. Beyond being a proud sister, Masanje says she's thankful Bamba John will forever be connected to a film that celebrates African culture.
It was just so empowering to watch, and I really wish that this movement isn't just with the entertainment, but it continues on in the community and shows us, what we're really capable of doing.
Jake Burns, CBS 6 News.
Last night we were out, we replaced this one.
He's fixing his steps, but Brian Moorman says his life is also under construction.
My father used to always have this saying, and he said, once you complete all your projects, you die.
Death is a topic Moorman says he contemplated a few years ago. After 20 years of service and multiple deployments to the Middle East, the retired Marine returned home, diagnosed with PTSD and a brain injury.
Oh, I was terrible as a person, I thought, when I came home. I mean, I didn't realize that how, to me, abrasive I was with the children, abrasive with my wife, because I had been at the VA, nothing worked. I had been to a private psychologist that didn't know anything about the military.
Then early last year, he connected with the Wounded Warrior Project and their Warrior Care Network. Gunnery Sergeant Moorman went through their 3-week intensive mental health care program.
And so I didn't unpack my bags for the first week because I thought I was going to leave. Oh yeah, it was pretty bad.
The program helped him identify his wounds from battle no one could see.
So in my trauma index, I had shot and killed a little girl that was about 6 or 7 years old. Her dad drove through a checkpoint.
Moorman says he didn't just identify his trauma, he learned how to cope with it in civilian life.
This is what I did at Road Homes. This is called Breaking the Blue. So, everybody wears a mask. And so Breaking the Blue was like the depression that I was going through. And had I not been to them coping mechanisms, I'm telling you, man, I would have made the news. Not in a positive way. You wouldn't have been interviewing me now. You'd have been interviewing me with the orange jumpsuit. I mean it.
Moorman says seeking mental health care treatment and finding it saved his life.
I have so many vets that I reach out to now to get them involved with Wounded Warrior, to get them involved in the program, to try to get them some help, to go to the VA. We don't, and we wait till it's too late.
With a $160 million investment in their mental health care program, the Wounded Warrior Project says more than 5,000 veterans across the country will have access to the same intensive program that Gunnery Sergeant Moorman went through. We are going to have info on that program on WTVR.com, or you can go to woundedwarriorproject.org. On a beautiful fall day in Carytown. In only days until voters head to the polls, a simple ask for whoever strolls by.
So you want to know what I'm thinking right now?
Yes, sir.
I know exactly what I'm going to write.
Money is what moves our political system, sadly enough.
Trusts, patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Money in politics, those are the things that I think about.
Strong leadership. As a good leader, knowing what to do with the money and appropriating it.
I think the greatest issue facing democracy today is voter disenfranchisement. We have major donors on both sides of the political spectrum who are keeping politicians in their pockets.
Millions of dollars have poured into big money races here in Central Virginia. The problem solvers dug into Federal Election Commission data to see how much money actually came from Virginians. In the lone statewide race, incumbent Senator Tim Kaine has raised almost $20 million more than his Republican challenger, Corey Stewart. We took a look at the large individual donors to each campaign. Kaine has received nearly 1,700 max donations of $2,700 from individuals, but less than 400 of those donors are from Virginia. Meanwhile, Stewart has only received 85 max donations, 60 of which came from Virginia donors.
That's not very surprising.
CBS 6 political analyst Dr. Bob Holsworth says the resumes for both men help explain why.
One, he was a vice presidential candidate, so he has a national profile for that. Secondly, Tim Kaine is an incumbent, and so he sits on a number of important committees. When you talk about Corey Stewart's donors, or the big donors, they're going to be people who might have worked with him in his role as chair of the board of Prince William County Board of Supervisors.
Major money has also poured into the 7th District congressional race, which poll shows a toss-up. Congressman Dave Bratt and challenger Abigail Spanberger have a similar number of major donors. Looking at the people who donated more than $2,000 to Bratt's campaign, more than half are from out of state. On the other hand, of Spanberger's major individual donors, only 35 are not from Virginia.
Just like Tim Kaine, Dave Bratt's an incumbent, serves on committees. He's going to have some donors from out of state.
These numbers do not include money spent by outside groups. In the Bratt-Spanberger race, independent political organizations spent nearly $7 million.
Politician Dave Bratt looks the part.
Holsworth says that outside money is responsible
Spanberger is a Nancy Pelosi liberal
for most of the TV ads flooding the airwaves all over the region.
The 7th District has become, on the national screen, a competitive seat. So what then happens is that all of these outside dollars funnel into the 7th District.
Back in Carytown, we met one more voter.
All right.
Bob Cohn got the final word.
Well, I think we've had enough of rhetoric and yelling and screaming and talking.
And says his vote is still more powerful than any dollar.
Whether that has an effect or not, I don't know. I know I've never been influenced by a campaign ad.
In both the Senate and 7th District races, Libertarian candidates will be on the ballot, but are way behind in fundraising. There are 2 more congressional races in our area, the 1st and the 4th districts. But political experts say those races aren't nearly as competitive, and the candidates have not raised nearly as much money. Working for you in Richmond, Jake Burns, CBS 6 News.
There's a magical feeling that's here in the Outer Banks. That's why we come here.
While many are leaving the Outer Banks because of the unknowns offshore,
the hurricane coming in is probably just going to be as beautiful as this.
Chris Henry plans on staying for Hurricane Florence.
Being ex-military, you go through things in life that are extreme. I personally have never been through a hurricane, so it'll be a new experience. But, I mean, it's just about the Outer Banks. This place is so different for most people.
Most visitors and many residents have already evacuated. Others finishing final tasks at home before Florence hits. The final preps for Dennis Bright are a little different, getting a home inspection on this new build.
The town will be doing storm assessments after the storm has passed, and getting an inspection on this home will be unlikely.
Bright is leaving the Outer Banks once his work is done.
Yep, got to be with the family during the storm. I hope the good Lord spares us.
This is the place that kind of eases my soul, so to speak.
Henry says he's prepared to ride out Florence, whatever damage it does to his new home.
Whatever we can do to help for the aftermath, we'll try.
Mandatory evacuations remain in place for the entirety of the Outer Banks. Officials are going to begin restricting access to this area beginning at 7 p.m. Wednesday night. Working for you in the Outer Banks, Jake Burns, CBS 6 News.